Nowadays, as you know, the forests are much smaller than they used to be in the old days. Forests were vast and deep. You could walk for days and never find your way out. A long time ago, on the very fringes of one of those great forests, there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children.
The boy's name was Hansel and the girl's name was Gretel. The family had very little to eat. To make things worse, a great famine came to the land.
Now, the woman gave a very disturbing answer that chilled the man to his bones. Do you know what? She answered. Early tomorrow morning, we will take the 2 children out into the thickest part of the woods, then leave them by themselves. They will not find their way back home, and we will be rid of them.
No, woman, said the man, I will not do that. How could I bring myself to abandon my own children alone in the woods?
Oh, you fool, she said. Then all 4 of us will starve. Maybe you should use your woodworking skills to make our coffins. And she nagged him until he gave in.
The 2 children had not able to fall asleep because of their hunger, and they heard what the stepmother had to say to the father. Gretel was upset and cried bitterly, but Hansel said, Don't worry, Gretel. Everything's going to be all right. I have an idea.
He picked up as many shiny pebbles as would fit into his pocket. Get up, you lazy bones. We are going into the woods to fetch wood. Then all together they set out into the woods.
As they walked, Hansel kept stopping and looking back. Oh, father, said Hansel, I am looking for my white cat on the roof, saying goodbye to me. You fool, said the stepmother. That isn't your cat. That's the morning sun shining on the chimney. But Hansel had not even looked at his cat. Instead, he had been dropping the shiny pebbles.
Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire. When midday came, each one ate his little piece of bread. After they had sat there a long time, their eyes grew weary and closed, and they fell sound asleep. When they woke, it was dark night. Gretel began to cry. Hansel comforted her. Wait a little until the moon comes up, and then we'll find the way. Sure enough, the full moon came up, and Hansel took his little sister by the hand. The pebbles glistened there like bright buttons, showing them the way.
He knocked on the door. You wicked children, why did you sleep so long in the woods? We thought that you did not want to come back. But the father was overjoyed when he saw his children. He hadn't wanted to leave them alone in the first place. Sadly, the famine continued. One evening, the children heard the mother say to the father, we must get rid of the children. We will take them deeper into the woods so they will not find their way out. The man was very disheartened. The woman scorched him with words and said, you agreed to leave them last time, so you'll have to agree again.
The children were still awake and had overheard the conversation. When the adults were asleep, Hansel got up again and wanted to gather pebbles as he had done before. But the woman had locked the door and Hansel could not get out. But he comforted his little sister and said, don't worry, Gretel. Sleep well, God will help us. Early the next morning, The woman came and got the children from their beds. They received their little pieces of bread, even less than the last time. On the way to the woods, Hansel crumbled his bread into pieces in his pocket, then often stood still and threw crumbs onto the ground. But little by little, Hansel dropped all the crumbs onto the path. The woman took them deeper into the woods than they had ever been in their whole lifetime.
Then they fell asleep, and evening passed, but no one came to get the poor children. It was dark, and night went when they awoke. When the moon appeared, they got up, but they could not find any crumbs, for the many thousands of birds that fly across in the woods and the fields had pecked them up.
They walked through the entire night and the next day from morning until evening, but they did not find their way out of the woods.
At midday, they saw a little snow-white bird sitting on the branch. It sang so beautifully that they stopped to listen. When it was finished, it flew away. They followed it until they came to a little house. The bricks of the cottage were made entirely out of sweet gingerbread, held together with sticky toffee. The roof on top was baked over with chocolate gangrene, chocolate biscuits, and decorated with giant buttons made of chocolate and with a gushing of white icing sugar, and the windows were made of clear sugar. Hooray, we can have something to eat, said Hansel.
Then a gentle voice called out from inside, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" The children answered, the wind, the heavenly child." They went on eating when suddenly the door opened and a woman as old as the hills came out. Hansel and Gretel dropped what they were eating. The old woman shook her head and said, "You poor children, are you lost? Come in and stay with me. You will be safe here. Come in, come in." Hansel and Gretel went to bed thinking they were in heaven, but the old woman had only pretended to be friendly. She was a terrible witch who had built her house so sweetly in order to lure children to her. If she ever caught a child, she would fatten them up and eat them all up.
Now I have them. They will not get away from me. They will be a full mouthful, she mumbled to herself. Then she grabbed Hansel and she locked him into an animal cage. She shook Gretel. "Get up, lazy bones! Fetch water and cook something for your brother. He is locked outside in the cage and he needs to be fattened up." Gretel had to do what the witch demanded. Hansel was given the best things to eat day after day, whilst Gretel received nothing but crayfish.
Every morning the old woman crept out to the cage and shouted, "Hansel, poke your finger out so I can feel if you are fat enough yet." But every time Hansel stuck out a little bone he had found on the floor. The old witch had bad eyesight and couldn't see the bone. She thought it was Hansel's finger and she wondered why he didn't get fat. After 4 weeks of this, the witch would wait no longer. "Hey, Gretel, hurry up and fetch some water, whether Hansel is fat or thin. Tomorrow I am going to slaughter him and cook him and eat him."
She pushed poor Gretel outside to the oven, from which fairy flames were leaping. "Climb in," said the witch, "and see if it is hot through." How can I get inside? Stupid goose, said the old woman. She crawled up, stuck her head inside the oven.
Then Gretel gave her a shove, causing her to fall in. The old woman began to screech frightfully, but Gretel ran away, and the godless witch burned up miserably. Gretel ran straight to Hansel.
They threw their arms around each other's necks. In every corner were chests of pearls and precious stones.
After walking a few hours, they arrived at a large body of water. There are no boats here, answered Gretel, but there is a white duck swimming. Duckling, duckling, here stand Gretel and Hansel. Neither a walkway nor a bridge. Take us onto your white back. That is what the good duck did. And finally they saw the father's house in the distance. They began to run, rushed inside, and threw their arms around their father's neck.
Gretel shook out her apron, scattering pearls and precious stones around the room, and Hansel added to them by throwing one handful after another from his pockets.
Now all their cares were at an end, and they lived happily together. Our tale is done, a mouse has run, and whoever catches it can make for himself from it a large, large fur cap.